Number 10, Scissors versus Genitals. In November 2017, an Argentinian woman was arrested after local police received reports of a fight that resulted in severed genitals. According to reports, 26-year-old Brenda Baratini had been dating her 40-year-old boyfriend Sergio for a few months. And while the couple seemed to get along quite well from the looks of it, their relationship was built upon a foul truth. Apparently, Sergio was filming intimate videos of Brenda and then showing them off to his friends. Things started to get worse though when it devolved into him getting abusive towards her. So, on one fine day, Brenda decided that she'd had enough and got a hold of some gardening scissors to teach him a lesson that he'd never forget. She teased him into a sexual game, blindfolded him, and the next thing you know, the police arrive at the scene only to find him bleeding on the floor with a severed penis. Now, according to Brenda, she didn't actually mean to fully decapitate her boyfriend's genitals and only wanted to injure him. But guess a pair of gardening scissors really isn't the most precise cutting tool? Like, who would have thought? Sadly for Sergio, the hospital employees weren't able to reattach his member either, which left him depressed. That said, perhaps he could find solace in the fact that Brenda was sentenced to 13 years in prison. Number 9, Jealous Samurai. In March 2019, a Washington state woman was arrested for slashing her boyfriend with a samurai sword during what was supposed to be a lovely getaway trip to Hawaii. 31-year-old Emily Javier had been dating her boyfriend Alex Lavelle for a couple of years, and while the couple had a pretty normal relationship, Emily had this strange tendency to go on jealousy-infused fits of rage, usually for petty reasons like someone liking her boyfriend's photo on Facebook. Now, at some point she thought that Lavelle was using a dating app and seeing someone behind her back. So, like a very normal person, she planned a one-way trip to Hawaii where she was going to murder her boyfriend and then take her own life. Oh, and rather than using a normal weapon, she decided that it would be a good idea to slash him with a samurai sword instead. She got Lavelle drunk and waited for him to go to bed. And when he was finally asleep, she hid his cell phone, got the big sword ready, and aimed for his throat. That's where she kinda screwed up though, as she hit him with the blunt side of the sword, which woke him up and gave him a fighting chance. Since she'd planned this in advance though, Emily had extra knives taped to the back of her bed, which she managed to grab and attack him with. Lavelle did eventually fend her off and call 911, but not without damage. He had to be rushed to the hospital suffering from life-threatening injuries. In fact, he had to undergo 6 major surgeries after getting stabbed 26 times. Surprisingly enough, he was pretty calm about the whole situation and credited his competitive gaming skills and love for kung fu movies. Emily, on the other hand, was given a 19-year sentence for first-degree attempted murder. Number 8, Free Spirit. In October 2021, police received reports of a man who'd been stabbed by his girlfriend, who later turned out to be a prolific adult model. 22-year-old Jeannie Exum had only recently gone viral for taking a nude photo in front of an NYPD cop car, and with over 40,000 followers, she was living the high life at a classy Manhattan pad with her model boyfriend, baby boy Pahulas. According to reports, the couple had a fight around 6:45 p.m., and in the heat of the moment, Jeannie ended up stabbing Pahulas with a kitchen knife. Witnesses say that he somehow crawled down to the building's lobby where the doorman called the cops. When the cops arrived, he was taken to the hospital where he received stitches for 2 stab wounds. Now, Jeannie's whole shtick was being free-spirited and wild, but no one could have ever seen this coming. It's not like she showed any remorse either, as she continued to promote her adult website profile even during her visits to the courthouse. Meanwhile, her boyfriend got a restraining order against her, but didn't pursue the case any further, which meant that she was scot-free in no time. If anything, the incident propelled her into stardom, as she basically gained 100,000 followers overnight. Number 7, Deadly Shower. In June 2008, an Arizona woman brutally stabbed her boyfriend 27 times and slit his throat after having intercourse with him in the shower months after they'd broken up. 32-year-old Jodi Arias started dating 30-year-old motivational speaker Alexander back in February 2007, about 6 months after the couple had met at a work conference in Vegas. In just under a year, they shared over 82,000 emails with each other. However, only 4 months into their dating life, Alexander decided to break up with Arias due to the sexual nature of their relationship, since he was a Mormon. 6 months later, though, he started dating another girl, and apparently this made Arias so jealous that she slashed his car tires twice. Things got really bitter when Alexander planned to take his new girlfriend on a trip to Mexico. On June 4, 2008, Arias visited his home in Mesa, Arizona, and had sex with him in the shower. However, after they were done, she proceeded to stab him 27 times, slit his throat, and then put a bullet in his head for good measure too. The police also found a camera on the scene with photos of them doing the deed and Alexander bleeding out. Throughout the investigations, Arias kept changing her statements, saying that it was self-defense and that invaders had attacked him. The evidence against her was too strong, though, and she ended up getting life in prison. Number 6, on the run. In November 2016, a Florida woman was arrested for stabbing a 21-year-old man to death and going on the run after what was dubbed a quote-unquote bad breakup. 21-year-old Melanie Eam had met James Barry in high school through their shared love for video games. It didn't take long for them to fall in love either. In fact, Melanie became a fixture of the Barrys' home life, often spending holidays with them. And even when James graduated high school, she dropped out and got a GED to follow him to Palm Beach State College. They even took the same classes together just to be close all the time. But everything imploded when James broke up with Melanie via a gaming chat app. Apparently, that was enough of a reason for her to go into a homicidal rage. During the early hours of Thursday, November 17th, she grabbed a knife, went to his home in Lockahachie, Florida, and stabbed him to death. Once the deed was done, she made a run for it and left the town. It took almost 3 days to find her, as she'd already driven all the way to Silver Spring in Maryland, which was over 1,000 miles or just over 1,600 kilometers away from the scene of the crime. Also, the only reason police even suspected her was that she dropped her cell phone on the patio. Melanie was eventually found guilty of second-degree murder and is now serving a life sentence. Do you think if James broke up with Melanie in a normal way, like in person, she wouldn't have killed him? Let us know what you think about the case in the comments below and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 5, beer trouble. In December 2013, a fun family Christmas Eve turned into a bloody disaster when a South Carolina woman stabbed her husband for not bringing alcohol back from the market. According to reports, 44-year-old Helen Ann Williams was setting up for a nice, relaxed evening before Christmas and wanted to enjoy a few pints with her 41-year-old husband, so he went out to grab some beers for them. By that time, however, the shops had already closed down, which meant that he had to return empty-handed. Apparently, that was enough to trigger Helen's alcohol-addicted demons. So, while her husband was making a sandwich in the kitchen, she snuck up behind him with a decorative squirrel and stabbed him in the chest with it. Luckily, it wasn't sharp enough to do any fatal damage, which allowed the man to escape to a neighbor's home and call 911. In the early hours of Christmas Day, the deputies found him covered with blood when they arrived at the North Charleston home. According to Helen, he'd just fallen over and cut himself, but she couldn't really explain why her hands and clothes were also bloody. She was arrested and sent to prison for criminal domestic violence. Number 4, love triangle. In December 2019, a Las Vegas woman was arrested for breaking into a home and stabbing her ex-girlfriend's boyfriend to death. 29-year-old Grizel Gonzaga couldn't bear to see her ex-girlfriend Alexa Incandela happy, as she continued to feel jealous about her new relationship long after their breakup. Incandela, of course, had already moved on and was in a happy relationship with 28-year-old Travis Smith. The pair often had sleepovers at Incandela's residence in Pine River Lane. Oh, and this was the same place where Gonzaga used to hang out with her too. One day at 5 a.m., Gonzaga just decided that she had enough and forced her way into her ex-girlfriend's home through a sliding glass door. As expected, she found both Incandela and Smith together in bed, which enraged her even more. A struggle ensued as Gonzaga picked up a knife and attacked them both. This ended with Smith getting stabbed in the abdomen and suffering from a puncture wound and head trauma. Incandela also suffered from lacerations and a bloody nose. Even though the rescue services arrived and transported Smith to St. Rose Sienna Hospital, it was too late as he succumbed to his injuries and died. Since this was a messy incident, Grizel Gonzaga was let off the hook and only charged with manslaughter and battery, resulting in 3 to 10 years in prison. Number 3, multidimensional healing. In December 2020, a Missouri woman was arrested for killing her boyfriend with a sword on Christmas Eve in what she described as a multidimensional healing process. Brittany Wilson was living with her fiancé Harrison Stephen Foster and his 2 children in her St. Louis home, where they were prepping for some Christmas festivities. However, to spice things up, the couple took some meth, which was a pretty normal thing for them to do. Things got kinda creepy when Wilson decided to cleanse her fiancé and free otherworldly entities living inside his body by stabbing him with a sword. According to her, he'd been harvesting body parts from individuals, and this was her way of healing him. Oh, and apparently she'd shared a meme on Facebook earlier in the day about some crazy, multi-dimensional experiences and superpowers. After coming back to her senses, she realized what she'd just done and called the police to report the murder. Officers found Harrison's dead body inside the home with several fresh stab wounds and arrested her. What's really twisted about the story is the fact that Wilson was seen pulling off a cheesy grin in her mugshot, which kinda meant that she had no remorse and was way beyond any vindication at that point. She was eventually charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. Number 2, a wild night. In February 2022, a drug-fueled sex marathon turned into utter horror as a Wisconsin woman choked and decapitated her lover, leaving his head in a bucket for his mother to find. Taylor Shabasness, a 24-year-old married woman and mother as well, used to go over to Shadrock Thyron's place in Green Bay to smoke meth and other drugs. The pair also used to hook up in his basement as well. On February 22nd, however, things got out of hand as they also injected themselves with trazodone, which is a powerful sedative. Once they were high out of their minds, they started off their usual routine, which included chains, choking, and a lot of other extreme stuff. Taylor seemed to have lost all sense of humanity, though, as she kept choking him with a chain until he was dead, with blood coming out of his mouth. But she didn't stop there. She proceeded to dismember his body parts and scattered them around for people to find like a scavenger hunt. A day later, Theron's mother stumbled upon her son's head in a bucket. It didn't take long for police to catch up to Taylor. They found her still covered in blood with scratches and cuts on her arms and hands. She allegedly told officers that they were going to have fun trying to find all of the organs. According to police, Taylor admitted to giving oral pleasure by using a toy on her victim after he was dead. She says that it's all a blur, but obviously that doesn't work in court. So as a result, she's been charged with first-degree homicide. Number 1, drunk burnout. In December 2012, a Tinley Park woman was charged with domestic battery after she ran over her boyfriend in the driveway of their house. It all started when 23-year-old Christine Myers received a call from her boyfriend asking her to pick him up from a bar. Apparently, after she picked him up, the couple got into an argument about his bad drinking habits. Now, drunk arguments seldom go well, which was the case here, too, as, when they reached their South Ridgeland Avenue home, the boyfriend refused to let her park the car on the driveway. Instead, he thought it would be a brilliant idea to get out, lay down in front of the car, and dare her to hit the gas. Myers, however, seemed to have had enough of him by this point, and did exactly that, running him over in the process. According to reports, she did a whole burnout on top of his body, which burned his chest and back. As a matter of fact, the car also somehow tore the skin off his scrotum, which meant that he had to undergo surgery to get his nether parts fixed up again. Myers was then arrested and charged with felony aggravated domestic battery. Thanks for watching. What do you think is the biggest red flag that could easily let you identify if your partner's going to go off the rails or not? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.